Hello, my name is Joanna Barry. Today I'm going to talk through an experiment that myself and my colleagues Rachel Williams and Eileen Irvin from Ipsos Mori carried out for NHS England and NHS Improvement. The overall aim of this experiment was to test the impact of replacing a postcard reminder with SMS contact. So today I'll talk through some background about the survey, the methodology we used for the experiments, the results, and then finish with conclusions we can draw from this research. So starting with some background about the survey. Ipsos Mori have run the GP patient survey for 15 years. It's commissioned by NHS England and NHS Improvement, the organisation that leads the National Health Service in England. And the survey asks patients about their experiences of their local GP practice and other health services. The survey is around 10 minutes in length, and it's a non-incentivised postal survey with an online completion option. We have a named sample from which we use random probability stratified sampling to select individuals over 16 years of age who are registered with a GP in England. The survey is large scale. We mail out to more than 2 million patients each year and receive responses from around 700,000 annually. The survey data is used as a key source of insight by many organisations, and the results are produced at national level for individual GP providers and for local commissioning groups. The previous mailing strategy for the survey involved postal contact by letter with a paper questionnaire included with each mailing, and a postcard reminder sent after the first mailing. However, participants could also take part online using login details provided on the letter and the questionnaire. To set the scene for why we've done this experiment with SMS contact, as with many other surveys, we've encountered the challenge of falling response rates and increasing postage costs over the years, which has resulted in an overall higher cost of running the survey. I mentioned the survey results are produced for individual GP providers, so it's important for us to maintain the sample size achieved to maintain the robustness of results at that level. To overcome these challenges, we've experimentally tested changes to the mailing strategy and survey materials over the years, with the aim of increasing response rates and/or encouraging online completion, therefore reducing costs. In the past, our sample frame provided name and address for patients, so the experiments involved changes to postal contact only. However, in 2020, a new sample frame provided access to mobile numbers and email addresses for the first time, allowing us to test push-to-web strategies with multi-mode contact using a combination of letter, text message, and email. We tested 12 designs in total and withheld the paper questionnaire from some mailings and some of the designs. However, this presentation will focus on the most successful design we tested, which was replacing the postcard reminder with SMS contact. Our rationale for testing SMS contact was that we know the postcard acts as an effective nudge to participate, and we wanted to understand whether this could be achieved using SMS instead, which is a cheaper method of contact. Since it's also possible to include a unique personalised link to the online survey within the SMS, we aim to understand whether this would encourage online completion. It was important for us to test this approach experimentally so that we could inform the future survey methodology without introducing any risk to the current main stage. We know there are typically benefits of pushing people online, such as improved data quality and improved representativeness from younger people. However, we also know that this approach could introduce risks, such as impacting trends, impacting non-response, or reducing the overall response rate. So our experiment aimed to understand the impact of replacing a postcard reminder with SMS contact on response rate, online completion, trends, and cost effectiveness. I'll now provide an overview of the experiment methodology. The experiments tested were embedded within the main survey, meaning fieldwork was carried out at the same time using a subset of the sample. This allowed us to clearly see the impact of each strategy tested compared with a control. As shown on this slide, the key difference between the experiment groups and the control was that we replaced the postcard contact with SMS contact. The control received 3 mailings with online survey login details and paper questionnaires, and a postcard reminder after mailing 1. The experiment 1 group also received 3 mailings, but an SMS after mailing 1 instead of a postcard. Experiment 2 received the same 3 mailings, an SMS after mailing 1, and then a second SMS after mailing 2. For the experiment groups, if there was no mobile number available in the sample, participants didn't receive anything at weeks 2 or week 7, but we did have a mobile number available for 78% of the sample. With regards to the sampling approach, the survey uses stratified random sampling. First, we estimate the number of patients to invite per GP practice to achieve robust results at that level. We then stratify within each GP practice by gender, then age band, then postcode, and select patients on a 1 in n basis. For the 2020 experiments, we obtained a control group from the existing sample frame NHAES. We then selected an experiment group from the new sampling frame, PDS, using the same criteria. We then deduplicated the PDS sample against NHAES, with preference given to anyone in NHAES. For the new sampling frame, some patients were allocated to experiment groups, and some were allocated to a control, which received an identical mailing approach to the NHAES control. We conducted analysis to compare the 2 sample frames and found that the sample profile and survey results obtained from them were similar. This meant that the NHAES and PDS controls were combined for further analysis of the experiments. With regards to the materials used, the letters used for the experiments remained broadly the same as the control letters, with some tweaks to mention the SMS reminder. However, the SMS content was designed to replace the postcard, and when designing this, we had 2 key learnings in mind. To ensure that the SMS appeared legitimate, we referred to the mailing letter that was sent previously to participants, and also used a named sender of GP survey. To make it easy for people to take part online, we included a unique link which directs people to the online survey without needing login details. Moving on to talk about the results. As shown in these charts, we found that where 1 SMS replaced the postcard, more participants were pushed online compared with the control, but the response rate was slightly lower. Where we sent 2 SMS reminders, we saw that more participants were pushed online and there was no significant impact on response rate compared with the control. Cost analysis that we did showed that both methods would provide significant cost savings compared with the control, and this is for several reasons. The experimental response rate was similar to the control, which means that there would be no impact on the size of the initial mailing needed to achieve the required overall sample size. We also saw an uplift in the proportion taking part online, which saves money on return postage, scanning and paper storage. And there was no significant impact on the timings of completes compared with the control group. Around 2/3 of participants respond following mailing 1 for both the experiments and the control. If this had changed, there may have been an impact on the volume of reminder mailings that needed to be sent. The group with 2 SMS reminders was more cost effective as it had a slightly higher response rate and a higher number of online completes. Other analysis we ran also showed the effectiveness of SMS reminders. More than 2 in 5 patients who took part online did this via the SMS link. As mentioned on the previous slide, we saw a higher response rate and proportion completing online where a second SMS was sent. And as shown in this table, for those with a mobile number in the sample, we saw a slightly higher response rate compared to those without a mobile. We also saw a higher proportion completing online compared to those without a mobile. Though looking at the control, those with a mobile number in the sample were already more inclined to take part online, likely because those with a mobile number in the sample are younger. I mentioned earlier the potential risk of impacting trends for the survey or impacting non-response bias. However, our analysis showed that neither demographics nor survey measures were impacted for the experiment groups compared to the control. This meant that there was no impact on trends. We also collected paradata for the majority of participants who took part online and used this to compare data quality across 3 groups: those who took part via the SMS link and used a mobile, those who took part via the website or the letter login details and used a mobile, and those who took part via the website or letter and used a desktop or tablet device. We found that there were no differences with regards to completion time or number of reaccess attempts across these groups. However, we did see differences for break-off rates and non-response. Break-off rates were higher for those accessing via the SMS link. The majority of these participants dropped out at the introduction page of the online survey. This higher dropout rate is likely due to the ease of accessing the survey via the SMS, meaning participants are less committed to taking part. In contrast, those who access via the website or the letter will need to enter login details to access the survey and will likely be more committed to participating by that point. Non-response was also higher for those accessing via the SMS link for 2 questions in the survey, both of which include long lists of items. As this slightly higher non-response was not seen for the group completing on mobile via the website or letter, it suggests this isn't happening because participants need to scroll or open drop-downs on a mobile screen, but that those completing via the SMS link are less committed generally and therefore more likely to skip the longer questions. However, it should be noted that this level of non-response is low, and generally online surveys provide higher data quality than paper-based surveys. For example, comparable figures for those who took part on paper were 7.3% for long-term conditions and 3.5% for ethnicity. So in conclusion, this experiment provided valuable evidence on the comparability between postcard and SMS contact using a large-scale, non-incentivized general population survey. To summarize the results, we found that using SMS reminders instead of a postcard increased online completion, did not significantly impact response rate, maintained trends as there was no impact on demographics, non-response bias or survey measures, and increased cost effectiveness of the survey. The experiment also provided us with extensive learnings on how to use SMS reminders effectively. I've touched briefly on some of these learnings when talking about the material design, but you can find out more about this in our SRA Research Matters article, which is linked here. That said, despite the success of this experiment, we can't currently consider text messages a replacement for all postal contact, and that's for several reasons. So we know that mobile-only response rates are lower, that postal contact remains vital for inclusivity, as some people cannot or will not want to take part online, and it's also vital for data quality, as we know that those who take part online are different to those who take part on paper. But text messages are evidently a powerful additional contact method. With regards to what we did after these experiments, we introduced the method using 2 SMS reminders for the 2021 survey. The percentage of online completes has increased to 37% and the response rate to 35.3%. There is a caveat that the higher response rate and online completion compared with the 2020 experiment result is likely due to the pandemic, and it's something we've seen on other surveys. People are less busy and feel they have time to take part in surveys, or are potentially more civic-minded, particularly towards the NHS. They're also less likely to leave the house to return postal questionnaires, which has resulted in their online boost. Nonetheless, it's been a very successful methodology change to implement. And that concludes this presentation. I hope you found it interesting and thank you for listening. Please do get in touch if you have any questions or would like to find out more about the research using our contact details on this slide.